To my sisters and brothers in Canada, gawis ay agato ko amin. First of all, I would like to greet you in the name of the National Council of Churches in the Philippines and wish you well even under the present circumstances of climate change in your part of the world. I also greet you on my own personal behalf as an Igorot from the Mountain Province. Secondly, I would like to thank you for even remembering to observe with us the annual celebration of the Cordillera Day. This year's celebration is punctuated by the brutal murder of 4 people, and I refer to Licubon Ligiu and his 2 sons Fermin, and who were brutally killed in March 7 in Abra, and on March 24 another leader was killed in Ifugao, William Bugatti. These 4 people are indigenous peoples. They are also environmentalists. They are, like many of us, calling for the preservation of land. And for many indigenous peoples, the call to preserve land is connected to the call to preserve life. I cannot say much about the investigation that is going on, but one thing is sure: the deaths of these 4 people, including the 40 others who were indigenous peoples who were killed since the time of the current president, speak of the continuing impunity that indigenous peoples and human rights activists face in this country. They are not statistics, as they are grim reminders that we should heighten our resolve to defend life and land, so that what happened to them would not be in vain. The Ligiu father and sons and Bugatti are the contemporary personification of the militant struggle of Cordillera peoples against the massive exploitation of our natural resources, not for the sake of opposing, but for the sake of future generations and for the sake of what indigenous people want: self-determination. Many years ago, the personification of that struggle was in Makliing Dulag, who, like the 4 persons I mentioned, was also gunned down in his own house. This year's celebration is an affirmation of what we must continually do. And we are very glad that many of you in Canada have been supportive of the advocacy work of the Philippines, especially with regards to the advocacy of the rights of indigenous peoples, and especially in relation to the massive resource extraction by firms that are registered in the Toronto Stock Exchange. Whether these are owned by Canadians or not does not negate the fact that these are registered in the Toronto Stock Exchange. On several occasions in the past, I have had the opportunity to travel to Canada, and I have spoken at large of the need for Filipinos and Canadians to seriously come together to talk about the implications of Canadian mining firms and resource extractive companies, multinational companies, to come together for joint studies and to try to see how we can balance the needs of Filipinos, especially indigenous peoples, and Canadians, especially Canadian church people. It's not an easy balancing act to do. Yet after all those times that I went there, I always returned home with the thinking that in many ways this is a struggle not only of the indigenous peoples in the Cordilleras, but also a struggle of Canadians within Canada and in Canada. But I am also strong in the hope that there will be more and more Canadians who will take this advocacy. There are very hopeful signs. One such sign is the continuing solidarity of people in Canada to the call for justice in the killings of these 4 people in recent weeks. Thank you for even signing on to the signature campaign to demand justice and peace for the Ligiu family and for the Bugatti family. To be sure, there is so much for Filipinos in Canada to do within Canada. Among them, to be in solidarity with Canadians themselves in the discussions and in trying to understand the plight of First Nations in Canada and to understand how such oppression is brought about by almost similar conditions that bring about the oppression of the indigenous peoples here in the Philippines and elsewhere in other countries in South America. It is important for Filipinos and Canadians to stand in solidarity with organized groups in Canada supporting and advocating the right of First Nations, as it is important to remember that there are many Canadians supportive of the advocacy of indigenous people's rights in the Philippines, and they have been very consistent, and for that we are grateful. It is also good for Filipino Canadians never to forget home. I don't know if it is ever possible. I know that you will find it impossible to forget home. Wherever you go, wherever you are, I know that most of us bring much of what we have, of who we are, and wherever we go, we celebrate. And that is what Cordillera Day is all about, a call to celebrate. Yet it is a call not only to celebrate, but to constantly remain vigilant and to constantly remain strong in uniting our ranks, in opposing monopolies that seek to destroy life. We have a lot of things to offer in this world. The values of indigenous peoples for community and caring are very good values that can counter the language of the present world, where relations are measured in terms of cash and where individual concerns take precedence over the welfare of the whole community. That is not just indigenous. It is also a very Christian virtue. It is our calling. Wherever we are, whatever we are doing, let us not forget that we do things not so much for our sake as it is for the sake of future generations, of future Filipinos, indigenous or not, of future Canadians, First Nations or not. There is only one world. This one is our world, and we all deserve a better world. And the call of the hour is a worldwide solidarity for just and lasting peace. Mabuhay from the Philippines. Have a good celebration. Thank you very much.